Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. You can support WitchLit and the serious book habit it requires at ko-fi.com/WitchLitPodcast. And you can be part of the show by sending in your own death, sex, religion, politics, money questions for our guests to victoria@witchlitpod.com. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and give us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It really does help other witches find the show. Here's to never getting to the bottom of our to-be-read piles. Astrea Taylor is an eclectic pagan, witch, and the author of Intuitive Witchcraft, Air Magic, and the forthcoming books Modern Witchcraft with the Greek Gods and Inspiring Creativity Through Magic. Her life goals include empowering other magical practitioners and encouraging them to use intuition in their craft. In her books and classes, Astrea shares her love of science, magic, history, mental health, and energy awareness. She also mentors magical people to help them walk their truest paths with more confidence and self-love. Jason Mankey is a third-degree Gardnerian high priest and helps run 2 witchcraft covens in the San Francisco Bay Area with his wife, Ari. He is a popular speaker at pagan and witchcraft events across North America and Great Britain and has been recognized by his peers as an authority on the horned god, Wiccan history, and occult influences in rock and roll. Jason is the author of several books, including The Witch's Book of Spellcraft, The Horned God of the Witches, Transformative Witchcraft, and the new book, Modern Witchcraft with the Greek Gods. Astrea Taylor and Jason Mankey, welcome to WitchLit.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. So, Jason, you're officially second time on the show.
2 more times and I get a jacket. I'll be in the 4-timers club.
Oh, right. Now I'm going to have to come up with a jacket. I think you and Corey Thomas Hutchison might have to fight that one out because I know we're going to have him back pretty soon too. So, well, the first question we always ask people, and Jason has answered this, but you feel free to answer it again, is, in this age of myriad ways of communication, why write? Why write books?
Well, I love books. I've loved books since I was a child, like most people, I think. And mostly I love how books can take you on an adventure, a journey. They can take you into other realms, either mentally or spiritually. Sometimes you can even have those physical sensations. And I just love that. To me, reading and writing is like going into another world. So that's what I really try to put into my work. It's like this dream that unfolds in a way. So I love being in that kind of a dream, that kind of an illusion, and it just lights me up in so many ways. So that's why I write.
Awesome. Jason, you want to weigh in again?
I'm contractually obligated at this point to write. It's a means of perhaps one day having my own Discovery Plus reality show. That's really the dream now.
So you'll have to come up with a not alien shtick. It'll be like witchcraft instead of aliens.
Absolutely. Has to be.
We can just call it Not Aliens and people will watch it.
I kid. I've always wanted to be a writer. So it's a blessing that I get to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool when, you get to see those books on the shelf with your name on the spine. That's a pretty, it sounds like for both of you too. It's like, that was my goal as a kid. It's like book on the shelf, name on the spine. So very cool. So this, Jason, I know you've written books with other folks, and Astrea, I think you have as well, right? Done other collaborative books.
No, this is my first.
This is your first
collaborative book.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be a statement to our working together that I will do another one. Probably. I'm open to do another one probably one day, but I've done 4 books prior to this by myself. And, it's nice to have a writing buddy that you're working on the same thing with. So it's a really interesting experience, and it's new to me. I know Jason has done it before, but so he had some experience going into this of what to expect and how things are going to unfold and whatnot. But I just really loved communicating about this book and like building that dream together.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my third one with other people. I think it's just because I want my name on as many things as possible. And this cuts down the time. It makes it like half the time. I don't know. It's great working with other people though, because one of the things I think about witchcraft is there are so many different perspectives in it. There are so many different ways of doing it. So to work with other people puts those perspectives in that maybe I don't have. And so I'm always like really excited to collaborate. I already know the next collaborative book I'm going to write and who it's going to be with. And if this book is successful, we'll probably have to do like modern witchcraft with the Celtic gods and the Egyptian gods and the Norse gods. It'll be like our whole thing.
As long as we have enough passage authors to fill in the blanks where we don't actively communicate with that deity, I think that would be fine. Because I loved researching this book. We're kind of both academics in that way. You know, Jason, you've written a lot about history. You're kind of known for knowing about history too. And I have a science background and I've written a lot of scientific papers and whatnot. But this is my first pagan exploration and I really loved it. I feel like it's been building for decades in my life since I picked up When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone and A Chalice and the Blade when I was a teenager. So it's really been an amazing journey to do this book.
I was going to ask about the research. I would imagine, if anybody picks this up and looks at the bibliography, they're going to know like this was a lot of work to put together. So how did you decide who was going to take what god and how that, did you toss coin or?
I think it was like September 2020 during the pandemic. And we had a phone call and we just divvied everything up. We had a structure for the book in place. We were going to do a little history of every major deity. And then there would be like a ritual or some magical work with that deity. And then find a third person to write about that deity, about their personal relationship. And we just went through, I'd written before about some of these gods, most specifically Pan. So I was like, I can't write that part because I've already done it. Because again, you want those different perspectives and those different ways of doing things.
Yeah, when I came across that in the book, I was like, oh, I bet that was the decision why Astrea wrote that part.
No, it's unfair to her because I'm like really critiquing it really hard. I'm like,
you're able to add we added a lot of suggestions to each other's works too. I was like, hey, you forgot this. And he's like, oh, crap. And he's like, why didn't you say that? And I'm like, oh, good. A couple of times it was like, maybe we shouldn't use that reference. That book kind of sucks. So it was like working with an editor up front.
That's not a bad thing. Yeah, to have someone to bounce that stuff off of. But I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Writing is usually this. Oh, sorry.
Well, one thing you forgot to mention, Jason, is that we kind of just like laid out all of the gods and we're like, okay, what do you want the most? Pick it first. And then, I'll go next and you'll go, I'll go. And so we really got to choose our top 5, I'm guessing, as far as like whether we wanted to do the history or the magical practices of those. And I think we were both really happy with that. And then there were ones where we were like, oh, I don't want to do either, but we have to do one or the other. So I'll do the easier one for me, or, I know you know more about that one, so I'll pick this one. And then, yeah, there were some ones where it was like, Jason was like, yeah, you have to write the history of Pan, which I actually enjoyed very much. It was great.
So I have to ask, just out of curiosity, like who is the kid left at the end of choosing your dodgeball team?
Aries.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were like, oh.
It's keeping with Ares in Greek religion too, because he was not like a major figure and a lot of the city-states didn't really like Ares at all. There's a reason that there's, the Acropolis with Athena up there, right? Not the warrior, but the planner. Mm-hmm. They did not like Ares very much.
Yeah, well, war is not great, right? Ever. So.
Even the Spartans didn't really like Ares very much, and they were pretty warlike. Like the only place he was popular was in Thebes. But yeah, there were some that were like harder to like get somebody to do than others. And then there were some that I ended up doing. I did them because I did not have relationships with them and did not know as much about them as maybe I should have. Hecate was one of the ones that I had to do the history of. And that it's sacrilege and witchcraft to say that, but I'm not a devotee. So that was kind of an experience for me.
Yeah. I mean, she is definitely, and you say this in the book, is like the probably most popular current deity, I guess, for witches. But I mean, yeah, not everybody can be in that boat.
And she had one of the longest magical sections too. I worked with her magically, but I didn't know her history either. So I thought the magical parts would be easier because I've already had some experiences I could share.
So did either?
The writing the history was difficult because while we think that we have all of this information about her and that she was this goddess that was huge in the ancient world, if you read a lot of books about Greek religion and the Greek gods, she's really kind of a paragraph or 2 paragraphs. She's a much smaller entry. So that presented some challenges.
Yeah. And I do wonder if like the reason I'm curious as to what was the spark for that, like why it was like just her time, or was there something in pop culture or something that like kind of sparked that?
I think it was her region. It didn't have a big city state, like Athens or Sparta. So I think that was why she's not in the records as much as, Athena or Zeus, Hera, Aphrodite, people that were more talked about by those cities. Because when we look at ancient Greece, you see that there were just pockets where certain deities were more important than other ones. And there wasn't any homogenous view of, this is the most important one. Zeus was kind of everywhere, but not everyone revered him as highly as other areas. And they all had similar stories or some of the same stories. But there are pocket deities where they just weren't quite as popular in some regions as others.
Yeah.
She also had being a Titan working against her, right? There aren't any Titans that are Olympians.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did in your research, did you come across a reason why you think she's popular now? Like what the resurgence for her has been?
She's the queen of witchcraft and magic.
That's what is it just the title? Like and so with this resurgence of.
Yeah, you can go back to Gerald Gardner though, in like his early books. He writes about her pretty extensively, I think, because she was seen as a goddess of witchcraft, right? So it's a well that's easy to go to. So she's been really a part of modern witchcraft since the first book on modern witchcraft was published in the 50s. And there aren't a whole lot of deities that are name checked in Gerald Gardner's books. So the fact that she is singled out by name probably played a large role. And you also see her a lot in pop culture. When people talk about witches and goddesses, it's almost always her. And I think pop culture has a huge influence on what we do. I'm not saying, pop culture makes people worship gods and goddesses. I'm not saying that, but we're certainly influenced by it.
Yeah. Well, and and if you believe that they have agency, then why would they not want to get name checked in pop culture? That's
absolutely yes.
No, I like that. In doing your research, other than obviously like Hecate and these ones that like are kind of footnoted in ways, did you hit a wall with anybody? Like just doing research, like we just can't find anything, but we want to include this person in the book, this deity in the book?
I think we were able to find a lot of information. We had a lot of different sources. I think that the wall that we hit more than anything else was getting exhausted by doing all the research. Jason, you mentioned that this is half the size, we share the work, but I put in just as much work, I think, as I did for my other books that I wrote by myself that are 100K, and this one's 100K words as well. But it's just, there's so much more information, and we wanted to get things correct and accurate too. And that's why we have like over 500 footnotes in there, so people can look back at things and see that, we're not making it up. We're not just taking unverified personal gnosis and claiming it is a historical fact. Yeah. So I think that was more of the wall that I hit, was just getting exhausted from all the research. And, we each had 6 Olympians and a few Titans, a few primordial deities. And then we each did like an introduction. Jason did a history. I did like a how to use this book kind of introduction. And, it was all coming together, but then I just ran out of steam. I think Jason ran out of steam first, and then I ran out of steam, and then he was going along, and then he lifted me up with his energy as well. It's kind of, it's always a journey when you write a book with someone, I'm guessing. But this was a unique one that I feel like we really inspired each other after a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about the book, and it feels like some of these deities I must have written thousands of words for, because you spend a whole lot of time researching a deity, looking things up, trying to get into the roots of it and the history and the stories behind it. And then I'm looking through the book, and it's like, this was a 300-word bit, right? And there was like 100 pages of reading just to get those 300 words.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the book was challenging in that respect because there was so much research to do. And I felt like when we started, my heart wasn't in it, and Astrea did all the heavy lifting of the book. And then by the end, I felt like the tables had turned, and I did a lot of the lifting. And because I think she was just exhausted because she was carrying my carcass for, the first half of the year we worked on this thing.
That sounds like a benefit of having a writing partner on the same project, is that you can, like, one person can pick up the slack when the other person's not feeling it or whatever. So.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
it was great.
Awesome. So coming away from the book, with all that, I think about that, probably with most books that this heavily researched, what we see of the research is the tip of the iceberg. But did either of you come away from the book with a different understanding or different respect or different relationship with the folks that you had picked to research?
Yeah. So I've worked with Athena for over a decade by the time I'd written the book, I guess. And she helped me get through graduate school. She helped me write my first 2 fiction books and then my first 2 other Llewellyn books. And by the time that I started researching her for this book, she was the first one I researched because I was so excited. And I started delving into her history, and it was so fascinating because most of these deities, I want to say all of them, have pre-Greek origins. They came from somewhere, even if it was a combination of other deities or what have you. And sometimes there's very little known about those pre-Greek deities, what they were, what their names were, what they were deities of. Sometimes we just have correspondences, some art, maybe a little bit of literature or an inscription on a temple. But researching Athena was really rewarding, and knowing where she came from, exactly where she came from, and figuring out her evolution through the ages as well. And I had an experience with her. Just so happened that nobody had chosen Athena to write about, surprisingly. So I got to write about her, and I was like, what am I going to write? I don't really know. And I had this very illuminating dream where I was, just looking at some future cityscape, some kind of utopia looking place in a dream. And I was totally in it, it looked 3-dimensional to me in my dreams. And then all of a sudden, everything froze. It was like a curtain. And then this being, this being made of electric lights, in a human shape, a little girl shape, kind of just pulled this curtain aside and just stared at me. And I knew it was Athena, and she was just judging me, and I was shocked. I couldn't say anything. I didn't know what to say or do. So I just, stood there and let her evaluate me, this being of light. And it was, I was transfixed in a dream. And after a little while, she just seemed like she was satisfied with what she saw. And she just smiled a little and closed the curtain. And then the dream started right back up again. So I woke up with that experience, and, going through the deities and learning so much more about them and having an experience like that is really telling that, you're getting on this deeper level. You're getting to know them on this deeper level and having these experiences these kinds of experiences are showing you that, yeah, there's more to this than just the myth. There's more than just the cultural practices. There's the direct experience as well, which is the heart of what I think the book is about, modern witchcraft with the Greek gods. We place them, we respect the history and the culture of the past, but we're in the present moment. And so that's kind of like where we were building toward. I think that we succeeded in a lot of them for a lot of the deities.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the journeys that I went on with some of these deities. Like Zeus and Hera really stand out, and Artemis and Hecate. But like Zeus and Hera are easy to talk about because you read mythology of Hera, and it's not very sympathetic. It does not paint a very good portrait of this goddess. Yet she was so revered by the Greeks, and they also really revered the Roman version of her too. And she was a very noticed goddess. Like she was just like so important and so beneficial to so many people. And Zeus is the same way. Like we put Zeus on this pedestal on Mount Olympus, that he's unknowable, that he's frightening, that he's scary. And people wrote about Zeus like he's their best friend. You want to play the Queen song and walk hand in hand with Zeus. And it's a really different understanding of the gods. And I loved that about this book and doing that research and seeing those things. And I've always liked the goddess Diana, and kind of her offshoot, of course, is Aradia. But I never really thought much about Artemis until I was writing the book. And I really fell in love with Artemis. Just the fact that she's so different than the rest of the gods, and that she's stuck in a moment of perpetual youth. She's not quite an adult woman. Yeah, like she's a little bit younger than that, which is really unique amongst the gods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things that I did like about the book is it is not like reading Bullfinch's mythology, because you do have this section on each god, the Olympians, and then the Titans has like a section for folks who haven't read it yet when it comes out, on like a personal relationship with that deity, and then a section on like actually doing magic with that deity. So it is not Bullfinch's mythology if people think that's what they're going to pick up. It is very different in that regard. So how did you decide, because you have a lot of contributors for those sections, how did you suss those people out? How did you find those people?
There were some people that we knew we wanted to write certain passages. Like Brianna, when she wrote the Hecate, when she wrote the Hecate passage, that was who we were going to get. We were going to get Bree. There was no question. And we could have had 1,000 people write Hecate passages for us, but we wanted Bree. So we had a couple people that were in mind to write passages. And then sometimes you were just lucky to find someone with some of the deities. Like you were just, oh, this is joyful that somebody actually wants to write this passage. And then there were a few that we couldn't find. Like we couldn't find Ares, and we didn't find Hades either.
We found Hades last minute.
Did we? Well, we did. That's right. You found Hades last minute. Yeah, and we didn't find Hephaestus. That was the other one that we didn't find.
Yeah. His story is really interesting. Like how popular he was, before Mount Olympus was, bigger than, I guess, longer ago. He was just way more popular, and then his popularity waned so much that he's kind of an afterthought now. We're like, oh yeah, the forager god of crafts and stuff. He's all right, but we don't see a lot of devotees. We really tried to find devotees for all of these deities, and some of them are easy to find. Like Hecate or Kate, however you want to pronounce it. We had a few for Artemis, a few for Aphrodite, but other ones it was kind of hard. It was like. Yeah. We couldn't find anybody. So we did our best trying to find them. And, I think that we magically found some people like the Hades passage, like the Hera passage. Those just came to us. They literally, those people came to us and were like, I've been working with this deity. Like, oh, okay, great.
Do you want to
write a passage?
Section?
It was also important. It was also important for us to find like a diverse group of people to write about the deities. It's not just a book full of like straight white men writing about the Greek gods, because they appeal to so many different people. So that was really important to us, was finding like a really diverse amount of voices to talk about these deities.
Yeah, that makes sense too. I was just thinking about Hephaestus, and like really, I guess his Roman counterpart is Vulcan. And I think about like, like the city of Birmingham in Alabama has like a giant Vulcan statue. And like there are, but I think Vulcan is more in modern life, is more like industrial. Like I think that's the like connotation with Vulcan is industrial. And that's not something as a witch I kind of want to, that's not something I would venerate as a witch, I guess. So it kind of makes sense that that's probably not as many people. Hades surprises me though, because he's having a hot moment in pop culture.
Oh yeah. And then there's Lore Olympus that is like kind of changing all the myths. I guess it's a retelling, it's I don't know. I don't know what to think about Lore Olympus sometimes. It's its own little dream version. It's kind of like the Marvel universe of, the Norse gods. I try not to take offense to that stuff.
Yeah. I have been reading it, and you're right. It is it's like the rom-com of the gods, kind of, I guess. And but I was also thinking like Hades Town, the Broadway musical. I
haven't heard about that.
Yeah, if I envy you the joy of discovery. And Anais Mitchell, so she did a concept album herself, and then it became this Broadway play. They've won Tonys. I highly recommend. So,
I mean, part of the thing with Hades is you're not even really supposed to say his name. Right. So, I mean, that's
you invoke.
It's hard. It's hard probably to get people to write about a deity whose name you're not even really supposed to say. Like the activity with him, like I call him Pluton the whole way through, because that was often how it was addressed, because, I didn't want to get in trouble.
That seems smart. That's usually not why you're writing the book, right? Like you don't want to curse your own book.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Fae in a way, it's, you don't want to use their names necessarily because they'll start paying attention to you. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. What can we do?
That's a whole other thing about writing this book is like, sometimes you just feel like, oh, I need to give an offering or something right now because I've probably pissed off this god. I think I apologized to Ares about 15 times while writing his little history section, because I was like, if he ever reads this, he's going to be offended.
Yeah, well, and I definitely had to stretch my abilities out to work with new deities, to test the spells out and test the rituals out, just because I wanted something that worked, and so really the ones that the magical parts, like we had to meet them, we had to say hello and have this kind of acquaintance so we could really be inspired by them, and then also figure out what works for them, like what kind of magical practices work for them, what they like, what they don't like, how things work for them so we could work with them and cooperate in the magical endeavor.
Yeah. No, I like that. And it does seem like, in addition, that kind of adds, in addition to the research, there's also that personal connection to be able to write that part. So it just seems like such a labor of love in a lot of ways, and just a labor by itself too. So.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but we loved doing this, and I think it shows too. I mean, we really had such a good time, even when there were tricky parts, we had to ask questions instead of making assumptions, explore possibilities. Even when Jason and I disagreed about something, we kind of just opened it up and let it just be open-ended and not conclusive. So it worked out for both of us in that way. Yeah. And I can't tell if you're laughing right now, Jason, or not, but
I don't think we had a lot of disagreements, but I do remember one in particular.
Eleusis, right?
Eleusis. It's always Eleusis with me. And you're not the first person I've done that to. Like, I've read people's books and I'm like, no, they did not use psychedelics at Eleusis. There's just no evidence of that. But they could have, I guess. But
there's a little
I'm pretty sure that they did it.
I think that some people did, but maybe not during the whole ritual. Maybe during when they were like chilling by themselves before everyone else got there. Who knows, right?
Oh,
pre-gaming.
Yeah, there's a little bit down the pots,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a hypothetical question, and when we explore, and I think that we did justice to that, and not drawing any conclusions is okay with us, because unless we have a time machine, we're just not going to know certain things.
Yeah, there's the downside of a mystery religion keeping its mysteries a little bit.
Yeah, they did a good job.
But for me too, like, and this kind of goes back a little ways to like a different question, but this work was a devotional work for me. The Horn God of the Witches was a devotional book for me, and this is a devotional book for me. I just love the Greek gods so much. And this is the kind of book I would have wanted 20 years ago when I was really starting my journey as a witch, because those were the gods I was attracted to, because they've been the gods that have always kind of called to me since my youth, right? So though it was a lot of work, it's really rewarding work, because I got to write this thing that, I'm giving to the gods, and I love that about it.
So what is that? I'm just like, I always think about like when you finish a book, like there's this weird space after you finish. So what was that like finishing it and like kind of looking at, because it seems like it would be devotional. There was a lot of work, a lot of research. So how do you like decompress from that and start looking at a new thing?
For me, there always seems to be something on the writing desk. So there's not a lot of time to decompress. I think while I was writing parts of this book, I was writing the Witch's Book of Spellcraft. And then while I was writing parts of this book, I'd begun working on the Raymond Buckland biography. So the problem is it's hard to switch gears from one project to another. But the gods are mostly pretty understanding. So they let me turn them off when I needed to turn them off.
Yeah, I took a whole month off from writing, which is longer than I usually do. And I had another book in the pipeline as well about the magic of creativity. And so there is a big gear shift when you finish writing a book and turn it in, and it's all in and good. And there's no more immediate revisions. And then you have to start writing another one. So getting a clear headspace was really important for me. I took a lot of walks. I saw a lot of friends. I partied as much as I could during a pandemic in the winter, and then jumped into the next one as soon as I could. So, I really liked ending the feeling of ending this book and everything being turned in, everything being pretty much correct. My only fine tuning was needed. It felt really good. It felt bigger than any of my other books, because it was, just so voluminous with all the data and the facts and information and the ways we presented it.
Llewellyn makes it challenging too, because of the way that they put together books. So you write a book and it might take you 6 months or a year or whatever it takes. And then when it's done, you turn it in, and then a couple of weeks later, they send it back to you and tell you what you did wrong and what they'd like you to change. And during that kind of intermediate time, maybe you've started another project, and then you have to like switch gears and go back to the book. And then there's like there's another round of changes, which is usually like edits to the book. And these are only done like 4 or 5 months ago, right? So you're already really immersed in another project. And then you have to like go back to this project that you thought was done, and you wanted it to be over with, because you wanted to get out for it to get out into the world.
Yeah. And you're like, what was that source? I don't know what that source was. I'm going to have to look through 14 different books. Okay. It's not these 14 books. So maybe it was a paper,
I don't even remember writing that. Are you sure that I wrote that?
Your own writing amnesia. I mean, I think it's like a protective mechanism for writers. Like, there's no way you can keep all that in your head.
Yeah.
I think you're doing those final passages, and Astrea's like, I didn't write this. And I'm like, I didn't write that. We'll just leave it like it is. Nobody wants to do the work.
Delete it.
Yeah. You want to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But we do the work.
I don't know if
you got to make sure that it's, shiny and perfect as it possibly can be.
Yeah, in the middle of all this, my cat has decided to go insane. So I don't know what's going on. But I'm sure the mic picked up some meowing.
We love cats. It's okay.
He is our podcat. But yeah, like the decompression from that makes sense to me, especially if something else is right on the horizon. But like now that it's out in the world, I mean, I think we all have this as writers. Like there is something I would do differently now that I've seen it in print. Do either one of you have something like that with this book?
I guess the only thing is I would have reviewed it again just for clarity and I don't know, musicality, I guess. With so many facts, it's important to have like a certain cadence. And, Jason is really good at being this writer who's really easy to read. And I think my work is more poetic. We just have different writing voices. So I think that a big thing that I experienced was making my writing more accessible. And I would go back again one more time and make it a little bit even more accessible for those people who, get used to Jason's writing voice, and, to come into my writing is just a little bit different.
I think this is like my best writing ever. Like I usually like my writing makes me want to throw up, and I go back to this book and I love how I started certain sections, like the Aphrodite, the Pacific Ocean is cold and violent. That's the opening line. And I'm like just happy with my work, and I'm usually not. So maybe it was just because I got to work with these gods that I love so much. Though there's also another thing about my writing that Astrea says, and some of our other friends say, everything I write begins with my wife Ari and I. And that's in this book too.
I mean, that's not a bad thing. Yeah. That's kind of sweet, actually. So
we had to designate who was writing which passages so people didn't think that I was married to her.
That would have been harder to explain to the public. Yeah, probably. But I don't know, having read it straight through, like, I never felt lost. I mean, I just like I never felt like a jarring switch between your voices. Like it seems to work really well. So
thank you. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
I think like the way that we put together the book too makes it so much easier, right? Because we're both writing about each of the gods in its own way, right? Maybe it's a history, or maybe it's a ritual or some spells or whatever. But, we both write about each of the Olympians and the other major deities. So within each section, you get both of our voices, which I thought was like really great. And really different from how I like wrote books with Laura Tempest Zakroff or my coven when we did Spellcraft. Like, Tempest and I was like, alternating chapters. We didn't really consult each other very much on the chapters, and she wrote about a specific thing, and then I would write about a specific thing. But in this book, we're sharing all the specific things.
Yeah.
We're sharing them in different ways, but we're sharing both of like all the specific things, and I love that.
And it is nice to get the multiple perspectives on each of those from the two of you, and then from all the contributors as well. That's one of the things I really liked about it.
Yeah, the contributors. I just have to clap for them real quick because they were amazing.
I think like most of my books have guest passages, and I love that because it introduces new writers out into the world. And oftentimes after somebody does a guest passage, they get the bug and then want to write their own books. And yeah, so that's like, hopefully like in 60 years, people go back through the things I've written and like, that was that person's first published work. They were slumming it in a Mankey book, but then they did their own thing.
Yeah, actually, your in Tempest's book, Jason, was my first published work. So yeah.
See what it leads to already?
Published stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So I know Jason has a hard stop, so I want to make sure that you both get an opportunity to plug what's coming next for you, and what's on.
Plenty of time.
Okay. Well, we also have our last question.
Yeah.
You still get your game of chance at the end, so I want to make sure we have time for all that. And all right, Astrea, do you want to plug first? So this will, sure. I'm trying to tell y'all when this will air. So it'll be like mid-February when this comes out. So you want to think about what's on the horizon.
Okay, so yeah, people can find me. I have a webpage. It's astreataylor.com. I also am on Instagram and a few other social media sites. And one of the best ways to learn more about me is to read my books. I have a book called Intuitive Witchcraft, which came out from Llewellyn in 2020. Air Magic came afterward, won a cover award. It was published in 2021. We have this Greek Gods book, and then I have a book called Inspiring Creativity Through Magic, which is coming out in July of 2023, and it's available for pre-order now. It's all about working with the creative spirit, whatever you call it, a genius, a muse, what have you, and ritualizing your art so you can really get into it, find those juicy nuggets, and bring them out into the world. And there's a section about performing or releasing your art into the world as well, and working with the egregore of your art too. So that was a really fun book to write. I really was looking forward to jumping into that one right after writing this one. So it was a wonderful transition.
Awesome. Jason, what's up for you? Where can people find you?
I have a website, panmankey.com, and I'm on all the major social media platforms. By the time this airs, will there be a Twitter? That's an open question, but for now I'm there. Usually at panmankey. I think on Instagram now it's the Silicon Valley Witch, which I just find hilarious. And Victoria, I also know you're a Silicon Valley Witch, so it's not like I'm saying I'm the only Silicon Valley Witch.
Silicon Valley Witch, not the Silicon Valley Witch.
Yeah. Yeah. So, everywhere. Lots of books too. This is my 9th book. Or a 7th if you like, depending on how you look at the collaborators. Are those half books or whole books?
I think you still just get to count it as a book. I think it's still a book.
I think so too. So 9 books. So much stuff. I'm gonna have my own bookshelf.
Yay. That's not a bad thing either. That's great. Yep. Cool. So our last question is the Scorpio in me question. So I'm going to roll a die, and depending on which I get, we can, there's no rules to this game, so we can make our own rules. You can each get at your own topic, or you can answer the same question. So, and I try to ask questions that are at least related to the work or your writing, not like a total 180, although, no rules. So if I roll, depending on what number I roll, you get death, sex, religion, politics, or money. And if I roll a 6, you get to pick which one you want. So 5. Oh, money. So would one of you like it, or do both of you want to answer the money question?
I'll pass.
Okay.
I guess you spoke first, so I'm stuck with it.
Nose goes. All right. So aside from free or not getting paid or pro bono work, what is the least amount of money you've made from a piece of writing?
Oh, wow. Like so much of it tends to be free. I would say blog writing probably, like, each post is worth maybe $2 or something. Mm-hmm. So that's, not very profitable writing. I guess if you're a witchcraft writer and you come into this to make money, like lots of money, you're going to be really disappointed. I think people have like really skewed ideas about how many books even a well-known witchcraft author sells. Mm-hmm. There are some exceptions out there, but, most of us have small print runs, and you're looking at, like in a good year, selling a couple thousand books, maybe 5,000 books or something, not like tens of thousands of books. So money in our arena is kind of a sensitive, depressing topic.
It's not just this niche. I think it's all, most writers make $1 a book or less.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think Astrea and I are both lucky that we've done much better than that. But if I was relying on book income to live, I would be lucky to eat ramen every night, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's I don't know, it's one of those things. It's like, it's so much work. Like, okay, let's say you do make $1 a book and you sell 20,000 copies, and it took you 2 years to write a book. You made $10,000 a year. Like that for that one book. That's not great. That's not even minimum wage.
No, and it is about $1 a book, really, like what you're getting in royalties. Mm-hmm. If it goes up the longer a book is in print. And I guess the idea is if you really want to be successful at this is to print publish as many books as you can. So maybe through volume, you end up doing okay.
Yeah.
And then I will say though, writing has given me opportunities to do things I never thought I would have ever done, going to festivals and events and things and meeting interesting people and seeing parts of the country I might not have otherwise ever seen. So, it's very fulfilling in a lot of ways. I mean, I would have never met Astrea without writing books. I mean, we live on different sides of the country and I was at a festival and we met, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very blessed that I get to do this, even if it is a little, tough on the wallet sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that, like the opportunity to do festivals and things like that. I think one of the topics that comes up in that circle is like so much of that work is also unpaid as a writer. Like you're kind of paying your own way to get there. You're either paying sometimes you get your fee waived to attend, but you still got to pay your own travel and all of that stuff. So I think it's still like, even in the money realm, like that's like, you got to go out to flog the book, but that costs money too. So,
yeah, I think I'm seeing it change a little bit, and I'm hoping that's the case. That some places are actually paying more. They're giving you more amenities. They're actually giving you a place to stay and/or travel. But that's not every festival. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see more because I think people would pay a little bit more on the entry fee if they knew that the organizers and the people who are presenting were actually taken care of, and it wasn't just on their dime. Because what happens when that's the case is that you get people who they have just more money to spend or invest in themselves, and so we're seeing kind of a smaller subset of the population being able to present at those places specifically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I had someone on social media ask me the other day, like we were talking about festivals, and they're like, which of those festivals actually covers all of the expenses for their presenters? And it's a very, very small list. I guess I'm lucky enough at this point, like if somebody asked me to do a festival, they're usually going to fly me in and give me a place to stay and feed me. And, sometimes even there might be like a fee on top of that, or I can sell books. So it's not like crippling financially, but there are still like big festivals that are what I would assume are successful, who cover almost nothing for presenters, or only really cover anything for maybe 2 or 3 presenters. And as Astrea says, if we want diversity at these festivals, we have to compensate people who are going to present. It's expensive to get to festivals. It's expensive to stay at festivals. And then you're losing income because you're not at your regular job.
Yeah.
If we truly value diversity, we have to spend a little bit more on some of these events. Yeah. People have to be willing to pony up, not $80 for a weekend, but maybe $150. And often if you look at the quality of people at some of these festivals, it's a real bargain, and it's a bargain because most of the presenters aren't getting anything.
Yeah. That bargain comes at a cost. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's sour.
I don't think it's sour. I think it's something that I know me. I like to get all this stuff out and talk about it, but like it does hit on what both of you touched on, that there are people who are going to be voices who are going to be left out of that because they can't afford to do that. They can't afford to take that time off work. They can't afford to travel without being compensated. And so we're, as a culture, we're missing out on those voices. And we're also like keeping an echo chamber of, mostly privileged people who can do that. So I don't think it's sour. I think it just needs to be said.
Yeah. I mean, there's also something to be said of, this isn't expensive. Anybody can go to it. Right. So, I mean, there's a balance that we haven't met yet. There's got to be a place to meet in the middle that, we can afford to spend money on a multitude of voices, that it's not just coming out of people's pockets to work. Pantheacon in San Jose was the biggest pagan festival in the United States for a couple of years until it shut down recently. And it was always funny to me. Like I would go there and I'd do like 3 workshops and a ritual or something, and it would cost me like $1,000 with hotel rooms and stuff. And I basically paid to work. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy that you have to pay to work. And that's how it is at some of these things.
Yeah.
I mean, and workshops are work. I know that Astrea puts time and energy into what she does. I put time and energy into what I do. Everyone that I know who presents at major festivals puts time and energy into what they do.
Yeah. Well, and I do think, one of the tiny silver linings of the pandemic was that we did have festivals go online. And so that changed the money equation because it was you took out the travel, you took out the hotels, you could pay people, you could make it less expensive for people to attend. So I'm hoping that going forward we keep those in mind too, and we have opportunities like that for people and for people who can't travel to go to festivals. I mean, it lets them have the privacy or the opportunity to do that at home. So I mean, that was kind of cool.
I'd like to see sliding scales more available too, so people who make less money can get entry, and maybe opportunities for bunk houses or renting out an Airbnb as opposed to getting your own hotel room. You have to split with one other person. Some ways that we can cheapen the total price, but still provide an effective environment where you can see these people that you've read for years and interact with them on a personal level. And, people can pay their sliding scale fair share.
Awesome. Yeah.
As a presenter, I don't like online stuff a whole lot because you don't get that give and take with an audience.
Yeah.
Like when I tell a dick joke, I don't know if people are going to laugh at it or not. So that's challenging in its own way, but they really give everybody an opportunity to see speakers that they're interested in seeing. And it's so much more affordable, and there's no travel and you don't have to pay all those extra costs. And I think that's something that's going to stick around because I continue to see the online events. Like I was at the Witches Sabbath, which Devin Hunter and Matt Oren and Storm Fairwolf put on, and Laura Tempest Sakroff. And that was great. I mean, there was like not a whole lot of presenters, but they were like good quality presenters, and there were people from all over the world attending, people from the UK and other parts of Europe, and of course United States and Canada, probably somebody from Brazil. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And so I love those online things in that everybody gets to participate and it doesn't cost a whole lot.
No, that's awesome.
I feel like online's interesting. I feel like an online workshop is one thing. It's pretty much, I don't know, you don't have the personal interactions, and I always miss that with online. But when I was leading a ritual online recently, I found that I could actually connect with people's energy the same way, in a similar way as if they were with me in the room. I think it just takes another set of skills. And I think during the pandemic, we were all learning those skills and, how to use Zoom, how to use a PowerPoint, how to give a presentation online and still have your personality come across, since you don't have the benefit of body language and a three-dimensional face and all that stuff. But I think the learning curve was steep for a while, but now we're mostly on board, and I've seen a lot of good quality output of online festivals as well.
Awesome. So, Astrea, would you like your own question too?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll roll again. If we get a 5, we'll just knock that one out.
Okay.
That was quite the discussion of money.
I know. That's why I love this.
We went deep.
So 3, religion. You just wrote a whole book about that. So this one takes it kind of a different way. So if you were going to set up a pantheon of sainted writers for you, who would be in your pantheon of writers?
Oh, wow. That would be amazing. So like the writers are deities, you mean?
Or people you venerate, I guess, mighty dead, however you want to look at it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I would love that. I mean, like, of course, Devin and Matt would be up there, in their own ways. And Jason, I think Laura too. And then, I have some niche authors that I like a lot, like Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I think that she would be an outsider kind of from the witchcraft community. And there are other, I guess, I really do appreciate a lot of the modern writers. And I think that, the elders have a place as well. The people who have been paving the way for us, like Starhawk, and Selena from Circle Sanctuary. I don't know. I think that my cosmology would be pretty vast, though. I'm touching the surface of just a few people whose work I just really, really love, and I can read over and over again.
Yeah, I like that. Jason, you want to weigh in?
Oh yeah, there's like, I'm thinking of all kinds of things. So Madeline Miller would be on my list because I would always want retellings of the Greek myths, and her prose is just so
she's
beautiful.
amazing.
Like, my God. Oh my God. Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote extensively about like conjure and traditions in the African American community. So I would definitely want her on my pantheon. Lilith Dorsey I would want on my pantheon, also just because Lilith is like one of my favorite people to eat food with at 2 a.m. Definitely Tempest. I love Matt and Devin so very, very much. Evo Dominguez. There's so like, we're just so blessed that we have so many great people in our community. And then all time too, Doreen Valiente, Doreen, and Ronald Hutton, author of Triumph of the Moon, the more academic stuff. I love that too.
Yeah, I know it does feel like we get to be in a golden age of research and writing on this topic. And I'm both like kind of in lay people's terms and in academic terms. There's just like so much. Like I just feel like my to be read pile would crush me if it fell over. So
yeah,
there really is something for everybody right now. I mean, there's so many different publishing houses and books that look at like really specific and narrow things within witchcraft. It really is a great time. Who would have ever thought there'd be a whole book just about eyes? That's crazy. Like, what idiot would even write that, and yet it exists.
There's a whole series of witches' tools, in fact.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you.
Probably too many.
I just want to thank you both for being on the show. This was a treat for me, and I hope that it was for you all as well.
Definitely. I love your questions. They're so unique.
Awesome.
It's always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to my jacket. So,
all right. I got to work on that.
Yeah.
I'll get busy embroidering.
Well, thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
WitchLit is a production of Thousand Volt Press. Our intro music is Cosmic Glow by Andrew Kay, and our outro music is Voices by Alexander Shanekar. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram at witchlitpod. Thanks for listening and for reading witchy.